And I want to bring in former House Oversight Committee Chairman and Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy, author of the new book, It Doesn't Hurt to Ask. Trey, always great to have your expertise on the program. So let's start with the Republican lawyers on the side of the Trump campaign and their legal proceedings. A judge seated now and the DNC saying, no, we're pushing back. What does all of it mean? What are we looking at?
Well, part of that's just process. I mean, whether the judge allows the DNC to participate or not, I don't know that that's going to change his analysis. With every one of these states, Harris, the question is, are your state laws constitutional? And if the answer is yes, are they being applied, and are they being applied equally? I think the issue in Nevada is whether or not persons who no longer live in the county were allowed to cast a vote. So that's an easy thing to determine. It just hasn't been determined yet, and unfortunately, it's going to require a court to do so.
So when you look at just, and we're going to move on because I want to get to Pennsylvania, but when you look at Nevada and the situation of them, it's taken them a little bit of time, but they're according to Joe Gloria, they're working their way through it. So he says November 12th will be a date that we should know something. They're still getting stuff together over the weekend. When you say constitutional, can you talk to me about the Constitution and what it says? Does it say anything about the time you take, or what does that look like?
No, I mean, our forefathers thought it was best to leave it up to the states to kind of set the election rules. So I think it's wildly irresponsible, Harris, for any state to allow the nation to be on edge. I mean, uncertainty breeds distrust. So it is irresponsible for a state to say, we're going to take your ballot for 10 days, but it's not necessarily unconstitutional. I mean, think about it for a second, Harris. This country can split atoms. We can liberate continents and we can cure diseases, but Nevada can't count votes before the Friday after a presidential election. So what's legal and what's responsible? I mean, you mentioned Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania General Assembly, their state legislature, they knew Election Day was coming 150 years ago. That's when we decided that the first Tuesday in November would be Election Day, and they knew we were in the throes of a pandemic, and they decided not to allow votes received after Election Day. That's what the General Assembly, the legislature in Pennsylvania, decided. And then a Supreme Court decided, no, I think we're going to give them 3 days. But if you can give them 3, you can give them 7. And then you can give them 12. And then all of a sudden, you're into December, and you have no idea where those electoral votes are going. So there's a difference between unlawful and irresponsible. Irresponsible, the voters have to do something about that. Unlawful is why we have courts.
All right, I want to move on, and that might apply to more than Nevada. I don't know, but that was interesting. Real quickly, Pennsylvania and where we are there. Larger, much larger than Nevada population, obviously, and they are counting very quickly. But there's a legality that they've been talking about with certain ballots. Explain it to us, and what do you think is going to happen next there?
Right. Okay. So the Constitution says your state legislatures can set the election rules. They're very clear. State legislatures. The Pennsylvania legislature said ballots received by mail by this time on Election Day will be counted. But if it's received after Election Day, regardless of the pandemic, regardless of problems with the post office, if it's received after this day, it won't be counted. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, not the legislature, the Supreme Court said, no, we're gonna take votes cast postmarked on that date, even if they're received 3 days later. It went to the U.S. Supreme Court. They punted on it for reasons only God understands. I don't understand why they punted on it, but they did. So that's a constitutional challenge. So remember what I said. Is the law constitutional? Is it being applied? And is it being applied fairly? That's the analysis your viewers should have. In Pennsylvania, the question is their state law constitutional?
Got it. I took copious notes. Thank you very much. And it is so